Thank you, Mr. Professor Seka, and good afternoon, everyone. It is truly a pleasure for me to be with you all today. And I'm going to talk about congestion pricing. I think you may be thinking, already a person is in a congestion and paying, why he has to pay already once you are in a congestion. It's very interesting concept, and it has been there for a long time, and it was really a subject of extreme interest among economists. And I think the very first application was no doubt in Singapore, and Mohinder is here. Nobody else can talk more about congestion pricing and how it works than Mohinder. So he will correct me when I go off track. You know, I personally, I have not been, I was in the World Bank before and surrounded by economists, and most of these economists really believed in congestion pricing. And from the days that Singapore started, we all were trying to propose mantra of every big cities to kind of think about congestion pricing. But to be frank, very few cities really were prepared to accept for various reasons. And so we will highlight some of those issues, why people were hesitant about it, and those who did something about it. So that's why it's very important. Theory is very good in terms of economic principles. When you come to practice, it's not an easy one. And I tell you, the person who was really pioneer of bringing this concept, economic concept of congestion pricing, very quick story. I used to be in the subcommittee of transit pricing in Transport Research Board in US, and I used to go to our meetings, and there used to be old gentlemen who used to come and just on the back, take a couch and sleep. And I never figured out who is this person, why he does that. And we used to discussing all kinds of pricing issues, and this person just walks in, sleeps, and left. And it happened to me twice. Anyway, the one day I see in the newspaper in 90s, and there's a Nobel Prize for economics was given to this gentleman, and his name was William Vickrey. So Bill Vickrey, who was also professor of Columbia University, he was one of the pioneers who started promoting congestion pricing as a way to introduce into transportation sector, particularly peak pricing and other things. So let me start. First of all, what is it? And I think I have to really address this issue. I have posed 4 questions, which I think all of you may like to focus on. First one is why we should do congestion pricing, right? And the second question is what others have done that it really works. And third question is what lessons we get from there, which is useful, or, and the last one is if I have to do something, how we go forward, right? Those are 4 things. And I think in India, we are reaching a stage where at one point or other, we have to think about it, whether it's Bombay or whether it's Delhi or whatever, or even certain road facilities or even tunnels or bridges, we have to think about how to do congestion pricing. And why we do congestion pricing, that's another issue. So we'll come to that. The first thing is, why charge road users for congestion? And so let's talk about economic rationale for it, why you should do that. And I think the economic rationale is that if we charge a fee for vehicle, as you can see the broad definition I tried to spell out here, at times and places where demand exceeds road capacity. What do you mean by demand exceeding road capacity? Means you have designed a road for certain so-called level of service, we call it A, B, C, and all that. So certain is speed and certain kind of density of traffic. And if something goes beyond that, then you start feeling delays, right? And you start getting delays because, so there is a dynamic stage of kind of a behavior, right? So the question is, when you enter into a traffic stream and you create that increment delay for everybody else, you should pay for it, right? If you are not causing that delay or deterioration to others, then it's okay. That traffic is moving fine. So what is that? Because you are causing delay to everybody is the social cost of society. And that's why this is, economists will call, negative externalities. So the question is how you measure that delay and price it so that you can use that resource to either provide alternatives or improvement you make so that there is no delay, right? So again, economic jargon that you should charge a marginal cost of delay. And if, let's say, everybody pays for it, let's say everybody is prepared to pay for the expansion of the road capacity or whatever, and they are willing to pay complete cost recovery of building a road and everything, that's a different issue. But usually what happens when you are in congested area like in the downtown or in some places, the cost of expanding your road capacity is enormous, and enormous negative externalities it creates. So congestion pricing is a very good instrument, a very nice tool to spread the demand in different modes and different entire network, and reduce the demand for that particular congestion point. So that's the idea. So what you do is you implement, whenever you implement, you have to make sure before implementing congestion pricing that people who are not willing to pay have alternatives. Alternatives could be public transport. It could be, they might be doing, like in US and all, they call ride-sharing programs or some other programs, right? So now the question comes, what kind of modalities in pricing you have? One thing is which is variable pricing, right? What it means is a time. So if your peak hour you're going, that's the time you're going to cause more congestion, so you pay more, right? Within peak hour also it will vary because depending on the traffic, how much congestion builds up over time within that period is a different price because a different amount of delays is caused by it. So that's the variable pricing. Second is zone or cordon pricing, where it is a downtown area, like let's say that's the area where everybody converges for work in the morning, and that area gets congested and it has a negative externality. So what you do is you cordon and define the boundary of that area, and everybody entering into it or getting out of it pays a fee, right? That's called cordon pricing. And third is system-wide, which is the perfect, I would say, much better and more pure sense of applying congestion pricing, because it is based on how much distance you went, at what speed, and how much congestion you cause, you pay for it. So just think about this. If one can do this, that means you can do for entire city for road network, that people pay for how much they drive on a road, which type of road, how much congestion is created by driving at that time of the road, and you pay for it instead of gas tax or many other things. So future is going to be that. And that way you can even run a complete network as a utility company. And that means you pay for amount of roads you used at time of the day, the kind of congestion level and all that. So that's an advanced thing, and this technology is already coming, and a lot of pilots have been done. So why congestion pricing is now coming in practice and people are considering more and more is because the technology is now available to really price it as accurately as possible for how much delay is caused and what price you should pay, right? So this complete GPS technology and variable pricing, all these things now can be done because of ITS and other tools which have come. Okay, this is and this is where the theory is coming into practice. So just to tell you why you do that and what are the implications of congestion pricing. So no doubt you're trying to do is by pricing, you're trying to improve the capacity of the road. Now, and again, as I mentioned before, you are varying the price depending on the amount of delay you are causing. So what happens? Once the price is introduced, what will happen to people? First, if your pricing certain things, and I know as a driver beforehand, I have a couple of behavioral changes. First, maybe I will not like to pay for it, and I will drive my car to alternative route. So that is called trip diversion. Or I will not go during peak hour. If it is not an important trip, I will go either before peak and after peak when I don't have to pay, right? Number 3, you may say that I will not drive my car, but I will take a bus or public transport, or I will take a bike, or I will take a shared ride system. And the same thing will apply to goods delivery side, because they benefit because their delivery time improves, because the trucks and all who are delivering in that area, they get better time and reliability of coming because the congestion is reduced. Now this leads to improved travel conditions in the area where you impose congestion pricing. Because congestion is reduced, delays are reduced, less traffic in that area, less emission, GH emission, and overall productivity of people grows because they are not wasting time in delays. Now this leads to improved road capacity, and it also impacts the businesses, residents who are living in that area, and economy of that area. So if the downtown area or city center area is very crowded, it's always congested, it affects the retail business, it affects the people who are living, it affects the environment, and land value as well. By reducing congestion, this might have a positive impact. Now this will lead to, but what happens is in reality, that just generates the revenue because you're pricing now congestion. So it gives you a lot of revenue. It also affects the business and their turnover because the productivity goes up, the retail sale goes up. It's more pleasant to go to the downtown and walk and shop and things like that. But at the same time, because of certain exemptions also you give, like for instance, people who are living in the area, in the cordon, why should they be paying a lot? So you give them exemption. People who are going, let's say, share ride program, or gone on other modes of transport, which is not individual car driving, you try to give some discount to them on congestion pricing because you want to encourage them to use those modes, right? So this leads to extra revenue, and that revenue, if you reduce the O&M cost and enforcement of the congestion pricing scheme, the leftover money you can use for providing additional public transport, improved bicycle facilities in the area, or pedestrian facilities and things like that. So you improve, again, the conditions, and it comes back to improved conditions. There is a whole behavioral network or kind of schematic diagram which I showed you. Now, this is exactly the entire framework we have to, in each context, we have to evaluate and think it happens or not, right? So that's my framework of thinking. Now, second question for you now is, who has done it? What's the experience of it? We just saw the schematic picture of it. And so I picked up first 4 cordon schemes which have been done. So the first one is Singapore on your top left-hand corner. And here you can see is that you have a downtown area where they did, there's a whole history of Singapore because they started very early. They were the first one, 1975. And that time there were not many, all the technologies we talk about were not existing. So it was purely, the area was defined, you go in and out, it was called area licensing scheme, and people used to put a kind of a certificate or slip kind of thing on their window shield, so when they cross it, they are allowed to go for a certain price, and it was not a dynamic pricing, that means not varying with the traffic level, but it was a very effective way to start, and I think it was really a pioneering effort, which got improved in 1985 to electronic road pricing scheme and other. And it now varies. They charge different rates for different road types. So if you are on the expressway, the rate is different. If you're on an arterial road, the rates are different. They have done much more sophisticated thing. On the right side, again, is the London rate pricing, which was following the 1980s. And this was a major effort in the London road pricing scheme, and there is a lot of work and research has been done on that, and we'll talk about that a little bit. And the third one came Stockholm, and you can see on the bottom left side. And Stockholm is a bigger area because you can see the water bodies are all around it, so it was easier for them to see all the bridges which were providing the entry to the center part. They had a road pricing scheme, and the last one in Milan center, downtown area again. So what happened? That's the question. What we learned from it. So this table just gives you, you can see it, the city population, all that I put in the first column. Second column, you see the kind of technologies and all that have been used. Basically what you do is, most of the technologies are that you look at, as soon as your vehicle passes, it gives a signal that I'm crossing this point, and as you cross that point, it takes also a picture of your number plate, which is mainly for, if you haven't paid, then it will charge you by mail or whatever other penalty it will give you. It's just purely to identify who is not complying with it. And you pay automatically, either sometime built into your car itself, you prepaid kind of system, or you can pay afterwards in the different ways, a kiosk and other things, or even on the computer, you can go and pay for your fees. But people, or you can have a monthly kind of a pass system and all kinds of things. The third column is just shows you what happened. The car trips went down, vehicle trips went down. Depends on which year these measures were taken, you will find different kind of values, but you can see the substantial improvement in reduction in congestion. Second is that it improves the speed of travel. It also promoted use of public transport and bikes in different places. Air quality standards improved, and different levels of trade-offs took place. In case of Milan, they started first with applying it for depending on the emission level, the carbon dioxide emission level and Euro standard level, they were pricing the cars. But afterwards, they came up with the area scheme, and they started charging for congestion. And the last column is basically how much they earn money and what share of that money is spent on operation and maintenance of the system, and what is the surplus. So if you take out, approximately everywhere, 20-30% is O&M costs. London used to have at one time very high, almost 50-60%, which was not a very good stage, but afterwards they did reduce it. So this you can see is the area-wide scheme in these four cases have been to large degree successful. And no doubt that is one of the goals which they had. The objective was to reduce congestion without major investment, at the same time improve public transport and pedestrian and other facilities, right? Bicycle and others. The other way to do is not to go area-wide, right? You just simply go and price certain section of a road or a particular tunnel or certain things, right? So this is an example I pick up from California. Here is on the left side top, the picture is that middle of the road, there are 4 lanes which are called hot lanes. And why they call hot lanes is because you can go, if you're more than 2 or 3 persons in your car, you can use it free. If you're a single person, you pay for the amount of time, at what time you're entering and what level of service you're deteriorating through your entry in that pass. And on the right side, the extreme lanes are free lanes. So anybody can go. And so they are not paying any fee. And those who are in these lanes, they are paying a fee or they are free. And if they're public transport, it is free as well. So public transport also uses these lanes. Basically the idea is high occupancy lanes will be free, and those who are going to pay for it, they will be free. Now the results I will show you later. And the same thing, at one time when I was involved with the Korea, I had suggested congestion pricing, but they did implement in the downtown tunnels in Seoul. So, and because it was getting congested, and these were literally these tunnels were funnels, very tight. So naturally they wanted to spread the traffic, so that they started charging for peak hour congestion pricing concept, and the result was the traffic level went down. So I will show you the next slide to show that. What happened to this experiment in San Diego, you can see they reduced 25%, increased the public transport use on the thing. And they also generated revenue not too much, but $2 million per year, and half of it they invested in public transport improvement. In second case, Orange County, you can see it, the express lane people were going at 60, 65 miles per hour, whereas the congestion lane people were going 15 to 20 miles per hour, right? So if you have that advantage, you can take. Other thing was that the express lane was carrying twice more number of vehicles than the free lanes people. So that means throughput was also high. And in terms of person trips, it was much higher because you're talking about public transport and other things. So it was a big benefit for 10-mile ride, half an hour people were saving. And there also, this was such a successful experiment that the private company finally sold the project to the government. The same thing was happening, the bridge pricing could be done, which is a next example. And then the Seoul tunnel thing, as you can see, is, again, they reduced the peak hour traffic by 13, 14%, speed improved in downtown area and other things. Right? And the Oregon is doing the experiment, which the last one I was talking about, the GPS-based system where you pay according to how much you drive on which kind of road at what time of the day and other kind of thing, which is a very sophisticated system. And this is going to be the future. So now the question comes, okay, you saw different ways you can do pricing. Now the question is, what kind of risk I have and issues I will face if I have to implement it? Now each of these projects I talked about had a long history, and they took a long time to really build local and the public support and other issues. So why it is such a difficult thing to do? And that's where the question is, what are the risks we are dealing with? And there were a lot of congestion pricing schemes which were rejected in a lot of cities. And New York is a classical example of the story is, because it was ideal. It's almost like a Bombay kind of island, and you can very nicely, in the southern part of New York, you could do, and you can imagine the 8 square mile area of the southern tip of New York has a more than $900 billion economy. Now, for such a high degree of economy, little improvement had a big impact on productivity, economy, everything. And everything worked, but finally it was rejected, and I will political reasons. But the reasons what we are, which we will learn from all these experiments, I've tried to summarize for you to look at. First thing is public perception. People say, how will I benefit from this? That answer should be very clear when you're designing this project. Is it double taxation? I'm already paying your gas tax. Why should I pay for it? But they do not what we have to explain is the gas tax is for road maintenance and other things. And it's a cost recovery for the road. But what you are doing is you're creating a externality by imposing and delaying, and that is not part of the road user charges. So this has to come clear. Third thing is, will this scheme reduce congestion or simply raise revenue? Is it just to milk me, or will it really going to reduce the congestion? People will question this because before you come to the third thing is, okay, what you got the money, where are you going to use it for? And most of the cases, as I said, they use the money for public transport improvement, other things. And the next thing is a privacy issue. When you talk about ITS, any kind of vehicle identification, people start questioning, oh, is it privacy issue? Now people have addressed this issue in terms of showing the technology that we never identify who is going and which car, because we rub off that thing. Only we try to track that car is only when that car is not paying, right? The then question comes inequity. This is the major issue in every project. Is it going to affect low-income people or certain group of people? Who will be winners and who will be losers? That's the fundamental. And this is also you have to illustrate very clearly in your project design that how far it is not affecting. And this is usually people have compensated by improving public transport and providing public transport alternatives so that the poor have an opportunity. It's not that they are deprived of taking and accessing that area or facility. Other thing is the impact on businesses and the residents and land development in the area where you are going to implement this scheme. And there is the whole, people do the entire analysis to evaluate what implications it could have. If you are very much dependent on transport access, those are the kind of companies which you look for. Like in London, everybody was happy. There was almost accepting 7-8% of businesses which were dealing with bulk retail business, and they needed, people won't come to buy that unless they have a car. So those kind of businesses were compensated and given time to open longer hours during weekends and things like that to increase their revenue stream. So you have to see the context-specific issues. Next is traffic will divert to other roads, some of it, during the peak hour. What is the implication of that? And this also, every scheme has shown that it's not been significant, a little bit traffic has diverted to other roads, because a lot of people who get diverted, they divert to public transport and other modes of transport. And the total diversion on the network usually is not very high. So but this is something one has to have an answer for whenever you're designing a scheme. Next is toll collection from those who coming from out of town within project area you're living in. Why should I pay? Now this is something you have to tackle down because there are different ways. Some places they have allowed out of town people to be free. In some places, nowadays with transponders and all that in your car, you can send bill to them in their home like any other thing. Cost recovery and the surplus generation. People always worry about, are you spending too much money just to operate the system? Like London was 50% at one time. Or are you doing this revenue, what you're going to generate, coming back to benefit me and others who will be affected? So that's important too. Institutional and legal barriers of implement. This is the biggest issue because the power to implement, collect revenue, apply and implement congestion pricing has to be at the level of the city. And the question is mayor empowered to do that? If mayor is not empowered to do that, forget about it. And what happens is mostly, if the mayor is, like in Singapore, I give you a class, New York case. Bloomberg, who was a mayor of New York, he got everybody on board, everything was fine, and in the end, he couldn't do it because state legislator, two of them, they hijacked the whole project because the Bloomberg didn't have that power to implement the congestion pricing. Livingston in London was given that power. So Livingston was himself empowered to price it, impose a tax, and collect it and invest it in London, center area. So that's the key thing. The last thing is political economy and the across jurisdictional issues. People who are out of jurisdiction and their political representatives always complain about it. And this happened also in New York case. The people who were in Bronx, certain areas, they were protesting more than those who were benefiting. So there will always be politics and the local representatives will come into play. Now, the last question. So what would be the roadmap if you ever think about considering the congestion pricing? The success factors are, first, you need effective leadership and very smart supporting team. If you do not have a good team and good leadership, which can articulate and address all the issues I raised before, people will not trust you. You will not be able to make it happen. Two, a visible benefit. People should see that by doing this, I will benefit very clearly. And if I will benefit, and whatever money is kind of collected out of the system is going to improve my options, my alternatives, right? The quality options I will get out of it. Three, that the legislation and everything is in place from the government side about empowering the local authority, local person who's going to implement, and he has the right interagency coordination at the local and state or whatever, different intergovernmental levels. If you do not have, you cannot do it. And this is a very tricky thing because you have a lot of elements in it besides traffic management, the bus transport, and all these things. Besides the road construction, it is about ITS system, it's about within ITS, how you collect system, where is penalty system, where is enforcement in terms of those who are not paying and all that. All kinds of, components will be there. The planning part is very complex because as the chart I showed you before about the whole benefit cycle and all that, it should be very nicely articulated and evaluated and quantified so that you can communicate with the people in explaining what this project is about and what we are going to get in the end. And there may not be perfect answers, but at least you will be able to define clarity of object. Why I'm doing it, how will I do it, how will you be affected, how will you pay for it, what I will do with the money. All answers should be clear. You have to educate, you have to outreach the civic organization, public, businesses, because all those who are winners and losers should be part of it. And every congestion pricing schemes which have been successful has their business endorsement. Referendums have gone, like Stockholm's and other places. All kinds of things people have done to make sure that they have full ownership. Cost and revenue management is another thing. What happens in early stage of the business? You are going to invest money and the revenue stream is downwards. So in the beginning, you have to put money from your side, maybe some of the agencies. And the question is what mechanism you have put together for cost and revenue management. Then question comes, easy, convenient, and pricing structure should not be so complicated that people can't understand. And nobody will price, you are literally, let's say I will give you a simple example of Heartland, which I showed you for that one. You are driving and you're going 10 or 15 minutes before when you have a choice to go to free lane or the priced lane. You see the price at that time. It's like a stock market. You will see the price at that time, what I have to pay. It's dynamic. Every 15, 20 minutes, that price is adjusted depending on the traffic level, right? So you will decide at that point, am I willing to pay that price to go on this road or I go this road? So what I'm trying to say, the pricing structure and the dynamic nature of that pricing structure should be clear. Now, in many places, there is not this dynamic. It is kind of fixed. Like, you are going in the center part of the city, you pay 10 pounds, period, one trip. So that's a different kind of issue. Whereas Stockholm, they have done, whether within the peak hour also, early 2 edges of the peak hour have lower rate and the middle has a higher rate. And a lot of places are dynamic. They keep adjusting every 6 months. They monitor the situation and adjust the prices. So there are different ways to do it. The last one is implementation is so important because the day you will implement such a scheme, it will create turbulence, right? Unless you have tested it, technology works, there is enough flexibility to correct it, and enforcement is done properly. All these issues must be worked out very clearly. And always be prepared for mid-course correction. Because it's not a perfect science. There might be different kind of behavioral changes than what you expected. Like even in London, the Livingston started with £5, and then afterwards, after a couple of years, he has to rate by 66% or 60% the price to again adjust. And so there has to be adjustment and flex. So that's the story of what we have learned. And if any one of you wants to try in your city, prepare yourself.
Dr. Bajpai, I think that we can thank you, Dr. Bajpai, for a very nice presentation.